Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going way back, almost 2,000 years, to unpack some surprisingly relevant wisdom. Imagine getting life advice from someone who lived in ancient Rome. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah, it's true. We're exploring moral letters to Lucilius, written by Seneca the Younger. He wasn't only a Stoic philosopher, he was also an advisor to Emperor Nero.
Wow, okay. Seneca advising an emperor.
Yeah, talk about navigating
Hmm,
a high-stakes world.
that definitely sets the stage. So these moral letters, are they like his private musings or something like
Well,
that?
not exactly private musings, they're personal letters of advice that Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, kind of like an ancient blog,
Oh, interesting.
covering everything from dealing with death to finding true friendship, even how to handle a world full of distractions. Sound familiar?
It does. So we're basically
Well,
getting a crash course in ancient life hacks. But before we dive into the letters themselves, can you give us a quick Stoicism 101? I need to make sure I'm following Seneca's train of thought here.
absolutely. Stoicism is all about focusing on what you can control. It's about recognizing that virtue stems from reason and accepting what fate throws your way.
Okay. So it's not about suppressing emotions or just giving up,
Right.
but more about understanding what's within your power and finding a sense of calm in that.
You got it.
Okay.
Seneca himself actually gives a great example of this in his letters. He talks about dealing with the loss of a loved one, something he unfortunately experienced quite a bit in his life. Instead of succumbing to grief, he emphasizes the importance of focusing on the good memories and the time you had with that person. It's about accepting what you can't change and finding peace in what remains. Pretty powerful stuff.
Wow. That's a really insightful way to approach grief. He's basically saying that dwelling on the loss won't change the situation, but cherishing the memories can actually bring some comfort. I can see how this stoic mindset could be incredibly helpful, even today.
It's fascinating how these ideas from centuries ago still hold so much weight. The human condition really hasn't changed that much, has it?
Yeah, it's true.
We still grapple with the same anxieties, fears, and that age-old search for meaning.
Okay, so we have the Stoicism basics down. Now let's jump into some of Seneca's timeless wisdom from these letters. Where should we start?
Well, Seneca had a lot to say about death, which might seem a bit heavy, but it's actually incredibly liberating.
Oh, okay.
He had this perspective that by confronting our mortality, we can actually live more fully.
I can already tell this is going to be interesting. I feel like most people try to avoid thinking about death altogether.
Right. But for Seneca, death was simply a natural part of life, not something to be feared.
Hmm.
He even wrote, "Every day, a little part of us dies. It's a stark reminder that our time is limited, and we shouldn't waste it on things that don't truly matter."
Wow, every day a little part of us dies. That's a powerful statement. It really makes you stop and think about how you're spending your time. Did Seneca offer any specific advice on how to make the most of our limited time?
Absolutely. He talks a lot about focusing on what's truly important. He wasn't advocating for a life of hedonism, but rather for living in alignment with your values. For him, this meant pursuing virtue, wisdom, and making meaningful contributions to society.
So it's about living intentionally,
Yeah,
with purpose. I can see how that ties into his stoic principles of focusing on what you can control and accepting what you can't.
exactly. And he doesn't just talk about these ideas in abstract terms. He actually gives concrete examples from his own life and the lives of others.
Okay, I'm ready for some examples. Give me the ancient Roman wisdom.
In one letter, Seneca discusses the importance of choosing your company wisely. He emphasizes the fact that surrounding yourself with people who share your values and challenge you to grow is essential for a good life. He even warns against spending time with those who are consumed by material pursuits or fleeting pleasures.
That's interesting because even today we talk about the importance of your social circle and how the people you spend time with influence you. It's like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I guess that idea has been around for centuries.
It's timeless wisdom, and it really speaks to the human desire for connection and belonging. But Seneca reminds us that those connections should be enriching and supportive, not draining or distracting us from our path.
Okay, so we've touched on death
Huh.
and choosing our friends wisely. What else did this ancient life coach have to offer?
Well, another big theme in his letters is dealing with distractions. And honestly, this is where I think Seneca's advice is even more relevant today than ever before. I mean, think about it. We are constantly bombarded with information and stimulation,
Right. It's like our brains are on overdrive all the time. Social media, news alerts, emails, it never stops.
right?
And Seneca was writing about distractions
Oh,
back when
right.
people were still riding around in chariots.
Exactly. He was incredibly aware of how external noise and busyness
Mhm.
can pull us away from inner peace and reflection. He even compares it to a storm that can shipwreck our souls.
Okay. Shipwreck our souls. That's a pretty intense image. It makes you wonder how many shipwrecked souls are out there like scrolling through their phones right now. Did he offer any practical advice for navigating this storm of distractions?
He did. And I think
Mm.
you'll find some of his suggestions surprisingly familiar. He stressed the importance of carving out time for solitude and reflection, away from the crowds and the constant clamor. He also emphasized the value of spending time in nature,
Mhm.
something that many of us find incredibly restorative, even today.
So he was basically advocating for digital detoxes
Yeah.
way back in the first century. It's amazing how some things never change.
It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what resonates so much with people today. Seneca wasn't saying we need to become hermits and completely disconnect from the world, but he was urging us to be more intentional about how we engage with it.
This is already making me think differently about my own relationship with distractions. It's like Seneca is giving us permission to step back from the noise
Mm,
and reconnect with what truly matters.
exactly. And I think that's a great place to pause for now. When we come back, we'll continue exploring Seneca's insights and see how we can apply his ancient wisdom to our modern lives.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about Seneca and how he viewed distractions as a storm that could really disrupt our peace of mind. It makes you wonder if he could have even imagined um, the level of distractions that we face today.
Right. I mean, he was dealing with the noise and bustle of ancient Rome. But today, we have all that plus the constant pings and notifications from our devices. It's almost like we're living in a perpetual state of information overload.
It's true, and I feel like I'm constantly battling that urge to check my phone or see what's happening on social media. Do you think Seneca would have had any advice for us, like modern day folks who are struggling to stay focused amidst all this digital chaos?
I'd absolutely think so. Remember how he talked about the importance of solitude and reflection? Well, in one letter, he actually gives this very specific piece of advice. He says, withdraw into yourself as often as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about disconnecting from the external noise, but also about connecting with the right people, those who uplift you and inspire you to grow.
Exactly. And I think
That's
that's
such a crucial.
such a crucial point, especially in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with images and messages. That can make us feel inadequate or envious. Seneca is reminding us to be selective about the company we keep and to surround ourselves with those who nourish our souls, not those who deplete them.
It's like he's saying quality over quantity when it comes to relationships, you know?
Yeah.
It's better to have a few deep, meaningful connections than to be surrounded by a lot of superficial ones that don't really add any value to your life.
You got it. And he goes even deeper than that. Seneca actually talks about the transformative power of true friendship. He writes in one letter, the good things which belong to prosperity are to be wished, but the good things which belong to adversity are to be admired. What do you think he means by that?
That's a good one. I think he's saying that true friends are there for you, not just in the good times, but also in the tough times.
Yeah.
They're the ones who stick by you when things get difficult and help you navigate those challenges with strength and resilience.
You're exactly right. He believed that true friends are those who challenge us to be better versions of ourselves, who offer support and guidance when we're struggling, and who rejoice in our successes as if they were their own. That's a pretty high bar for friendship, wouldn't you say?
It is a high bar, and it makes you think about the qualities you value in your own friendships. Are your friends helping you grow and become a better person? Are they there for you in the tough times as well as the good times? Those are some important questions to consider.
Definitely. And Seneca believed that. Finding these kinds of friendships takes effort and intentionality. It's not something that just happens by chance. You have to actively seek out people who share your values, who inspire you, and who you can learn from.
I'm curious, did Seneca have anything to say about dealing with
Yeah.
those friendships that might not be so healthy or supportive. I think we've all had those relationships that leave us feeling drained or uninspired.
He actually addresses that directly. In
Yeah.
one of his letters, he writes, "Avoid such people as, after having been with them, make you uneasy with yourself, men who diminish your self-respect and make you uncomfortable and self-conscious."
Wow. He really doesn't mince words, does he? It's like he's saying, if someone makes you feel bad about yourself, walk away. That's pretty sound advice, even 2,000 years later.
It is, and it speaks to his belief that
Yeah.
we have a responsibility to protect
Yeah.
our own well-being and mental health. He understood that. Surrounding yourself with
Yeah.
negative or toxic people can have a profound impact on your own sense of self-worth and happiness.
It's a reminder that it's okay to be discerning about who you let into your life. You don't have to feel obligated to maintain relationships
Yeah.
that are no longer serving you.
Exactly. And it ties back to his Stoic principle of focusing on what you can control. You can't always control who comes into your life, but you can control how you respond to them and whether you choose to continue those relationships.
I love how Seneca's advice is so practical and down to earth. He's not just talking about abstract philosophical concepts. He's giving us real-world tools for navigating
Yeah.
the complexities of human relationships.
He really is. And he does it with such clarity and wit. He's like
Yeah.
that wise friend who always seems to have the right words at the right time.
Okay, so we've covered death, distractions, and friendship. What other nuggets of wisdom did Seneca offer in his letters?
Well, he had a lot to say about the nature of happiness and how to live a meaningful life. He believed that true happiness comes not from external circumstances, but from inner virtue and a sense of purpose.
This is something we touched on earlier, but I'm eager to hear more about Seneca's perspective on this. It seems like a very Stoic idea, finding contentment within rather than chasing external validation or possessions.
You're absolutely right. Seneca believed that. We often mistake pleasure for happiness, when in reality, true happiness comes from living a virtuous life in accordance with reason and nature. He argued that external goods, such as wealth, fame, or power, are fleeting and ultimately cannot bring lasting fulfillment.
It's about shifting our focus from what we have to who we are.
Right, exactly. He believed that. Virtue is the sole good, and that all other things are indifferent. This doesn't mean that we should reject material possessions or worldly success, but rather that we shouldn't attach our happiness to them.
This makes me think of the Stoic practice of negative visualization, where you imagine losing the things you value in order to appreciate them more and detach from the fear of losing them.
That's it. That's a great connection Seneca definitely touched on. This idea. He believed that by contemplating the impermanence of things, we can free ourselves from the anxiety of clinging to them.
So it's about finding a sense of inner stability amidst the ever-changing nature of the external world.
Yes, and this inner stability comes from cultivating virtue, which for Seneca included qualities such as wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Those are some pretty admirable virtues. Did Seneca offer any practical advice on how to develop these qualities?
He did. He stressed the importance of self-reflection, examining our thoughts and actions, and striving to align them with our values. He also believed that we can learn from the examples of others, both positive and negative.
It's about being mindful of our
Yeah.
choices, learning from our mistakes, and seeking inspiration from those who embody virtue.
You nailed it. He saw the pursuit of virtue as an ongoing process, a journey of self-discovery and growth. It's not about achieving some perfect state of being, but rather about striving to become the best version of ourselves.
I'm starting to see how Stoicism is not just a set of beliefs, but a way of life, a practice that requires constant effort and attention.
It is, and Seneca was a master at showing us how to integrate these principles into our daily lives. He didn't just preach Stoicism, he lived it.
That's what
that's it.
makes his letters so compelling. It's like he was
Right.
inviting us to join him on this journey of self-discovery and to see how these ancient wisdom traditions can still offer guidance and meaning in our modern world.
And I think that's a perfect place to take a breath before the pen tool. We delve into the final part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are still some fascinating insights waiting for us in Seneca's letters.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Seneca's moral letters. We've explored some pretty profound ideas already, from facing our mortality to finding true friends, and even how to navigate that sea of distractions that seems to surround us all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing how relevant his words still are. It's like he was writing for us, even though he lived almost 2,000 years ago.
It really is. And I feel like there's still so much to uncover in his letters. What other gems of wisdom has Seneca got in store for us?
Well, one of the things that really stands out in his writings is his emphasis on living in accordance with nature.
Okay, that sounds interesting. But what does that actually mean? Especially for those of us who spend more time in the concrete jungle than in the actual jungle.
That's a great question. For Seneca, living in accordance with nature wasn't about literally living in the wilderness. It was about aligning yourself with the rational order of the universe.
So it's about recognizing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
That our individual lives are interconnected with the cosmos as a whole.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that.
Yeah.
Everything in the universe
Yeah.
operates according to certain principles.
Okay.
It's about accepting what we can't control, like the weather or the passage of time, and focusing on what we can control, which is our own thoughts, actions, and reactions to the world around us.
That makes sense. It's about finding that balance between accepting the natural flow of life and taking responsibility for our own choices and behaviors.
You got it. And Seneca believed that by living in accordance with nature, we could find a deep sense of inner peace and fulfillment.
It's like he's saying that true happiness doesn't come from trying to bend the world to our will, but rather from aligning ourselves with the natural order of things.
I think you're spot on. And this idea ties back to some of the other themes we've discussed, like accepting death as a natural part of life and finding contentment within ourselves rather than chasing external validation or possessions.
So living in accordance with nature is about accepting what is, focusing on what we can control, and finding joy in the simple act of being alive.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's a message that seems to resonate with people across cultures and throughout time.
It's almost like a universal truth, no matter what your background or beliefs are. There's something inherently grounding and comforting about connecting with the natural world and recognizing our place within it.
It's a reminder that we're not separate from nature, we're a part of it. And when we forget that, we tend to create unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on life and how to navigate its challenges with a bit more grace and wisdom.
Me too. Seneca's insights are truly timeless.
Yeah.
And even though he was writing in a very different time and context, his words still speak to the core of what it means to be human.
And that's what's so remarkable about these letters. They're not just some dusty old texts. They're a source of practical guidance and inspiration for living a better life, a life filled with purpose, resilience, and meaning.
They are, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. But before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. Seneca challenged us to live in accordance with nature, to find contentment within, and to embrace the present moment. So I ask you, what is one small step you can take today to incorporate these ideas into your own life?
That's a great question to reflect on. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Seneca's moral letters, I want to thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope you found it as enriching and inspiring as we have.
And remember, the pursuit of wisdom is an ongoing adventure, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the world of ideas.